There's a common idea or concept I see thrown around online every now and then. Every so often on Twitter, Reddit, Discord, Twitch, or wherever, I'll see a specific question. It makes the rounds on social media every few months or so, it's something that chatters like to ask streamers, and it's generally a nice little conversation starter. It's like a gaming Rorschach test, a personality test, using video games. And I see the same answers every time this happens too. And a few of them kind of, I wouldn't say bother me, but they definitely make me go, I'm not sure you'd actually want that to happen. The question is simple, but has heavy implications. If you could wipe one game from your memory and play it all over again, seemingly for the very first time, what would it be and why? Essentially, what's one experience you were so fond of, you'd want to experience it all over again today? You tend to see the same answers every time this question makes the rounds. Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, World of Warcraft, Red Dead Redemption, The Last of Us, Skyrim. But there's one problem with this hypothetical scenario. How can you even be sure you'll have the same experience, especially in a modern context? Thanks for tuning in to Input 1. If I could erase one game from my memory and experience it again for the very first time, what would it be? My favorite game of all time is The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Uncharted 2 crafted my taste in games and made me love them the way I do now. Fallout New Vegas is probably the best written RPG I've ever played. Need for Speed Most Wanted and Burnout 3 are both racing game bliss, but none of those would be my answer. And it's for the same reasons I can't help but think of the monkey's paw whenever someone answers Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time to this question. Be careful what you wish for. Alongside the answers of Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time, there often lies the follow-up of, it's because I loved this game as a kid, or I played the hell out of it when it first came out, or it blew my mind when I played it for the first time. What game would you pick? Would you pick something from your childhood? I mean, a lot of the games I love come from the formative years of my life and a bit beyond. I would have been around 8 when I first played Wind Waker, 9 or 10 with Most Wanted, 13 with Uncharted 2, and 14 with New Vegas. Those years between 6 or 7 to 16 or 17 are huge. So much so, I went back to the old well that is my trusty top 100 list from 2018 and noted the assumed age I played each game at. Now, I've played a lot of freaking games since I made that list, so there's a lot I would actually change if I made an updated version, which I may or may not be thinking about. But despite the list's age, it's still an accurate showcase of my tastes since, as you'll see, I played most of the games on the list during the formative years between 7 and 17, like I mentioned before. Only 28 out of 100 games on the list were not played during my childhood or teenage years. That means 72 of them were. And just because there are games like Symphony of the Night or Valkyria Chronicles on there, that doesn't mean I played them fresh off the store shelf. I can mostly remember exactly when and where I was when I played pretty much all of those games. And I know that's not exactly quantifiable evidence that I can prove to you, so you'll just have to take me at my word here. Nearly 75% of my favorite games of all time were played up to when I was 17. So, at least in my case, it's relatively safe to say that most of everyone's favorite games of all time were probably played during that same period of time, right? Is that an unsafe assumption? I don't think it's unfair, considering that period of time in childhood and young adulthood is when we experience most concepts for the very first time. The first game, the first shooter, the first multiplayer shooter, the first racing game, the first arcade racing game, the first racing simulator, the first JRPG, the first open world WRPG, the first action game with RPG mechanics. See what I'm getting at here? You have that big smack in the face over and over and over again all throughout this time, saying this is what a video game can be. No, this is what a video game can be. No, this is what a video game can be. Every single one of those big smacks on the face leaves a remarkable impact on your memories. So to erase one of those impacts and attempt to recreate that same feeling today, well, it's impossible. With your current knowledge of games, that impact would be replaced by small ripples that game created and implanted in other games. Let's say you erase Mario 64. You chose that game because you had never seen a game like that before. That game blew your mind with its inventive use of an emerging gaming technology and its whimsical creativity. That game was pure childhood bliss, and you would love to experience that feeling again today. I think it's safe to assume that you, having chosen Mario 64, and as a viewer of this channel, have probably played a few 3D platformers or 3D games in general. Anything from Banjo-Kazooie to Ratchet & Clank to The Last of Us Part 2. Any one of these games could have replicated that same amazing revelation that, whoa, games can be 3D now that Mario 64 is gone. But I honestly can't even tell you the first 3D game with a fully controllable camera I even played. Probably Spyro the Dragon or something. I don't remember it blowing my mind either, it was just the way games were, you know? So by choosing Mario 64, you are basically creating that feeling for yourself. No mind-blowing moment, though this is what games can be moment. You'll just be like the rest of us poor saps who played Mario 64 well after playing games like Super Mario Galaxy and then think, huh, that would have been pretty wild in 1996. You'll never get that moment back if you erase it. And the same goes for Ocarina of Time, World of Warcraft, Wind Waker, Uncharted 2, Skyrim, Dark Souls, Fallout 3. The impact any of those games had on you had the impact it did because you played it at a specific point in time. You had never played anything like it. Nothing else has ever made you feel the way that game did, which is exactly why you'd want to experience it for the first time again, right? But allow me to be blunt. You will never have that experience ever again. I know it hurts, and I know you don't want to hear it, but nothing will ever make you feel the way you felt when you played your favorite game of all time for the very first time. Some things may come close, but you will never have that feeling again. Just because something blew your mind or made you completely addicted to it when you played it when it was new, that doesn't mean it'll do so again. In fact, you'd probably go, I've got other stuff to play right now, I'll get to it later. I know you probably have enough faith in yourself to be in love again. Like having faith you'd still love your partner if you had your memories of them wiped. This thing is special to me for a reason, so I will surely fall in love all over again because this game and I are tied together like fated lovers. I'm sorry, but I just don't think games work like that. They're very dependent on when they came out and our perspective going into them based on prior gaming experiences. Naturally, when you don't have very many gaming experiences, even really minor stuff can be mind-blowing. And if you have lots of gaming experiences, what might be mind-blowing to someone else is just another Tuesday or Friday release for you. I didn't play Mario 64 until well after playing 3D masterpieces like Mario Galaxy, and well, I didn't like it. After years and years of playing modern iterations on what Mario 64 established, going back to those floaty controls and vague, cryptic objectives, I just wasn't having a good time. Same goes for a lot of Ocarina of Time. So much has been iterated on and perfected since both of their releases, their flaws became that much more apparent to me. I can appreciate what these games did for the time, but I also realized there was no way to force myself to completely enjoy them as if they were brand new. Like, half the puzzles in Ocarina of Time are just turn around and look up. I actually much prefer Ocarina of Time's 3DS remake because, well, yeah, the iffy puzzles and cryptic dungeons are still there. I feel the visual and gameplay enhancements made dealing with the game's annoyances much more bearable. But what about some other games? How about Skyrim? Even when it was new, there were a lot of people who immediately said they preferred the Depth of Oblivion or Morrowind to Skyrim's more simplified approach. And that's without mentioning the bevy of bugs and glitches that at one point were endearing, but are now a major point of criticism levied against Bethesda game studios. Playing Skyrim today after great Western RPGs and open-world adventures like The Witcher 3, Horizon Zero Dawn, or even Final Fantasy 15 would be like going from driving a McLaren P1 to a Lamborghini Countach. Like, a Countach is charming and lovable in its own ways, and you have tons of people who'd rather own one over a McLaren or Ferrari, but you gotta acknowledge it has its share of flaws and has since been completely outclassed at its own game. And I know love and favoritism when it comes to video games isn't so objective and logical, and I'll get to that in a second. You erase Skyrim, you probably replace it with The Witcher. You erase World of Warcraft, you probably end up with Final Fantasy XIV, Red Dead Redemption 2, The Last of Us, maybe Uncharted 4, or The Last of Us Part 2. You'll get those same huge impacts, just somewhere else at a different time. So by erasing one of those formative games, you're just going to be filling that void with something else that had the potential to be that formative game, right? And I don't say all this just to be mean, I say that to remind you why your favorite game is your favorite game. It's because you will never feel that way again that makes that particular game one of your favorites to begin with. It's due to playing that game when and where you did that you feel the way you do. Wind Waker is my favorite game of all time because it filled me with whimsy and wonder and still does to this day. Uncharted 2 showed me a type of presentation I'd never seen before in games. New Vegas had me ravenously consuming lore and context in a way I had never done before. I'd never give up or trade those experiences to be felt in other games or at a different time. Instead of Wind Waker, maybe I would have fallen for Beyond Good and Evil. Instead of Uncharted 2, Tomb Raider. Instead of Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4. And I don't want to get all Ben Shapiro on this and say, no, this hypothetical situation is stupid and it's pointless to consider it, or what, something like that. I still think this concept is always a fascinating thing to consider. I just wanted to go through and maybe help people come up with a more thorough answer to this question. So, to make sure I'm not being a party pooper, here's my legitimate answer to the question: if you could erase your memory and play a game for the first time again, what would it be? If I was going to choose a game to forget and experience for the first time again, I'd want it to be a sure shot. A game I know for a fact that would make me feel a certain way again. A game that gave me a feeling I want to feel again. A game whose absence wouldn't be replaced by anything else. A game I know, almost as if destined by fate, I'd fall in love with all over again. I think it would have to be recent, something that cut through the years and years of experience with gaming's mechanical evolution and showed me, someone with a defined taste, something new and exciting. If this can cut through and smack me on the face and impact me well after my formative years, then this is surely something, and I'm talking about Death Stranding again. This is a video about Death Stranding. I swear I didn't plan this. I literally decided as I was writing the script. It's Death Stranding. So how many is it now? How many videos have been stealth Death Stranding videos? Anyway, I thought about going for something like The Last of Us Part 2, but that game is a gauntlet. I love that game to death, but that was an extremely stressful experience, and I think if I experienced that again as if it was for the first time, I would probably have an anxiety attack. There just isn't anything else quite like Death Stranding, and I think it comes across just as well today as it did when it came out in 2019. If not even more so, considering the way the world is today and the game's themes about isolation and connectivity. I miss the incredible vibes of sitting in the dark during cold November nights, navigating through the game's vast world, Monster Energy drink in hand, listening to the game's incredible soundtrack. It was a completely fresh experience that showed me something I had never seen before in an age when I didn't think that was possible. If not Death Stranding, then maybe Ghost of Tsushima. I haven't been that immersed in an open world game in a long time. I turned off as much of the HUD as I could and lost myself to the whims of the wind. It felt like the first open world game post Breath of the Wild to use its obvious influences in a way that didn't feel shallow. And for the record, I would say Breath of the Wild, but so many games have attempted to recreate its open-ended design, it's almost kind of suffering from the things I described in regards to Super Mario 64. At a certain point, other games adopt groundbreaking ideas until they're not only common, but assumed. That's why I would choose either Death Stranding or Ghost of Tsushima. Death Stranding is new and different enough for its mechanics to be unique to it, and only it for the time being, and Ghost of Tsushima is largely iterative of other ideas, but stands out thanks to its beautiful world and natural open-ended design. I have a hard time choosing anything other than those two games because honestly, I value the specific time I shared with certain games too much to move those games to, well, now. And even though I would consider choosing Death Stranding and Ghost of Tsushima, what I just said still stands for those too. So, to answer the question, if you could erase your memory and play a game for the first time all over again, which game would it be? I'd probably just not choose, to be honest. Maybe I would go for a game I played but didn't enjoy the first time around, and play it again with a more mature perspective, like Metroid Prime or Dragon Age. These are games I want to love, but just didn't for one reason or another. And to be fair, I could probably just give them another shot and I'd begin to love them, I don't really know. Or I could just erase Sonic Riders and then I just wouldn't play it again, so it stays forgotten. Either way, I'm not about to erase a treasured memory just for the possibility to feel a certain way again. It reminds me why video games are special to begin with. By playing a game you love, those memories are kind of locked away in that game and become unlocked every time you play. I wouldn't love Wind Waker the way I do now if it didn't still make me feel the way I did when I first experienced it, you know? You don't need to erase anything to remember how you felt for the first time. The games do that on their own anyway. It's why we love them. The memory of that feeling will always be with you whenever you play that game, be it your 2nd, 5th, 10th, or 50th time playing it. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, sharing it with friends, and feel free to follow my Twitter account and support me on Patreon. If you support me at the $5 level, you get a full 24 hours of early access to every major video I publish, and at $15, you get your name listed in every major video just like this. So, thank you to everyone who supports me and this channel on Patreon or otherwise. This has been Input 1. Stay tuned.